Some big news to go over today is the Pittsburgh Steelers have made multiple moves, and ahead of the biggest game of the year on Sunday against the Bills, Omar and the Steelers have made more moves. And not only that, we have some huge updates, including one surrounding Aaron Rodgers that has fans very intrigued. A ton to go over on this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Steelers content. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to go over today, and the Steelers continue to make moves, in this case to their practice squad, but very notable given some of the injuries that are happening and have occurred ahead of the game on Sunday. And of course, there's a lot of games happening tomorrow on Thanksgiving, some afternoon games. The Steelers avoid the Thanksgiving slate, but there are a lot of things to go over. Now, we can see here the Steelers have signed wide receiver Cornell Powell and DL Anthony Goodlow to the practice squad, and have also released Mark Robinson and Daquan Hardy. And we saw Mark Robinson briefly, in a mix of roles there, and was elevated to the practice squad, sent down, all these different things. We're going to be focusing on the players they added. Now, again, if you've been watching the channel for a while, initially you might think that these moves aren't massive, and they aren't. They aren't huge in themselves, but with the injuries that have been happening, with the way that things have been, injuries have been going for the Steelers, we've been seeing a lot of practice squad players, whether that be actually starting games, whether that be on the special teams. There's a lot of implications here for a lot of these guys, but let's dive into each of them in case you're unfamiliar. So, multiple moves, including Goodlow and Cornell Powell. Some context on Goodlow and some insight. He was originally signed by the Los Angeles Rams as an undrafted free agent following the 2024 draft. He also spent time in the Cardinals practice squad and was elevated for three games this year. He played college football at Oklahoma State, where he played 14 games, 42 tackles, 18 of them solo stops, 7 tackles for a loss, and 3 sacks, and obviously started his career at Tulsa. So it's again, this is not going to be a guy who is it's not going to start on Sunday, but it is depth for what has been a very up and down season for the Steelers thus far. Now, they also went out and they got Powell, who was drafted by the Chiefs in the 5th round of the 2021 draft, so a bit of a higher prestige on him. He played 3 seasons with the Chiefs practice squad, appearing in a few games in mid-2020s. He played for the Seahawks practice squad, but he also, of course, had a bunch of different... He's a wide receiver, right? And at this point, the Steelers have a bunch of wide receivers that they probably use ahead of him. Asante Samuel is obviously the cornerback. They also got Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who would be way ahead of Powell in this case on the wide receiver corps. But at the same time, you can never go wrong. And a lot of times, these guys are signed to try to mimic either, in some cases, the quarterback. I know they signed Reese last game to try to mimic Caleb Williams. Ultimately, it didn't work very well, but you can never go wrong with it. And he played college football at Clemson, 93 receptions for 1,200 yards. Nothing crazy. And then, of course, Daquan Hardy and Mark Robinson, who I mentioned we've seen before, they're both gone now. So they are, released from the practice squad with the way that things have been going there. So let me know down below. Are you familiar with any of these players? What do you think about the moves? Again, nothing crazy, but at the same time, each one of these has their own impact in a long season. 17-game season. A lot of these, especially for the the Steelers right now with all the injuries they're dealing with, you can never go wrong with depth. It is practice squad. We'll see if they get elevated ahead of the game on Sunday, and of course, we'll keep you up to date if they do. But it's also interesting to see them making these signings, and they still haven't elevated Asante Samuel. They haven't elevated Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 2 players I just mentioned. Both guys who, when they were signed, were seen to be at least what we thought were going to be elevated at some point. I expect MVS to get an elevation some point here shortly. Now, a couple other things to go over. So let's go over the practice today, because there is a few notes from practice. So no Broderick Jones this week means a competition at left tackle for the Steelers. Calvin Anderson or Andrus Peat could start there this week. Now, covered this in the video yesterday. Being without Broderick Jones is not ideal, especially for a Bills team that likes to run the football, but they're also just a very, the Bills are a fantastic team, and they're coming off of, like I've mentioned numerous times now, a mini bye week. Of course, they played last Thursday, so they had a week off, a week and a half off until the game on Sunday, and they lost to the Texans in pretty brutal fashion. Josh Allen, we know throughout his career, he always bounces back well. I'm sure everybody over there is going to want to pummel the Steelers, and they're without Broderick Jones. So expect Calvin Anderson to get the start in his place. That would be my guess, rather than Andrus Peat. But of course, we'll see at that point. Now, on the flip side, some positive news is that Alex Highsmith, he's officially going through individual drills today. He's going to be good to go on Sunday, which is interesting because a lot of fans out there, and let me know down below how you're feeling about it. People were talking about how they should trade Alex Highsmith because Nick Herbig has been so good at that spot, and obviously they got him recently in the draft. He looked really, really good. A couple bad penalties last week, but ultimately put a lot of pressure on the Bears, and that's what you want to see from, of course, a guy like Herbig who hasn't had a ton of experience at the NFL level, of course. Whereas Alex Highsmith, on the other hand, signed to a big contract, is one of our best players in theory, right? But I wouldn't be opposed to potentially trading him in the offseason, but it's too early to talk about that right now. I am curious to see what Taylor Lawson does with Herbig and his role going forward, because he has been very, very good this year, and I don't want to, similar to Darius Slay, we saw James Pierre get many of the reps last week, and it was supposed to be a very shocking decision by Mike Tomlin to start Darius Slay. It ended up being a lot of snaps for James Pierre anyway, and I didn't really see many complaints about Darius Slay's snap count until, of course, he didn't get many until there was an injury to Joey Porter Jr., who also came back and is going to be good to go on Sunday as well. Now, speaking of good to go, so initially it appeared that Aaron Rodgers did not practice. Now, he didn't, right? He didn't practice officially. He's not going to be available for practice today. However, a couple different notes here. A tweet literally just dropped from Nick Farabaugh, and that means that you can see here, I'm just going to read it out. Aaron Rodgers says he'll return to practice tomorrow and see how he feels Thursday and Friday before determining if he's comfortable enough to play on Sunday. So this isn't great, initially, because we were hoping he was going to be practicing today. Mike Tomlin recently came out and said that he was going to be good, should be good to go on Sunday, and that all signs are pointing to him being good to go on Sunday. Him not practicing is probably a wrench in that situation just a little bit, but at the same time and in the same vein here, he's going to take it slow, and we'll have updates each day leading up to that. And of course, with the slate, the heavy slate starting tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, all these different things, it's going to be exciting to see some other teams play where we can kind of chill out a little bit and relax. But didn't practice today. Going to hopefully be back at practice tomorrow. Again, Tomlin said he is optimistic that he will be starting soon, specifically this Sunday. And a couple other things here before I wrap up. Again, this was the report from yesterday from Ian Rappaport, where Tomlin said he has great optimism that he'll play. A little bit scary that he didn't practice today, because usually, again, he has plenty of time. You have Thursday, Friday, Saturday to kind of rehab. Doesn't want to push it, but in the same vein, I'm sure he'll be good to go. Now, there has been some more people upset about Mike Tomlin. So this dropped 30 minutes ago, and I wanted to kind of get your guys' thoughts on this as well. So Mike Tomlin has won a playoff game in only 4 of his 18 seasons as Steelers head coach. When is the national media going to shine a light on that terrible stat? It is a bad stat. Of course, if you're a Steelers fan, you know how bad this stat has been. He did win the Super Bowl, and that's kind of what he's getting carried by. Just leave a comment down below. Just a yes or no, do you want to see Mike Tomlin fired this year or after this year? Yes, no, you want to keep him, and you want to keep him for the foreseeable future, because fans are starting to turn on him. The media is starting to turn on him a little bit. I had a video the other day. Patrick Queen called out Taylor Lawson and inevitably Mike Tomlin, because he is the defensive mastermind behind this, even though Taylor Lawson is the defensive coordinator. People are starting to turn on Tomlin, and a lot of that's due to the fact that the defense has been really bad this year. You haven't been able to win playoff games. And also something that, again, is more on Arthur Smith, who I think has looked fine as your OC over the past few games. They haven't really been able to get DK Metcalf involved as much as they should. You're paying him $30 million. A lot of question marks heading into Sunday's game against the Bills, the biggest game in a very long time. Hopefully they can take care of business. Let me know down below what your thoughts are. Cheers.